8 years after Washington traded up to get the second overall pick in the draft, they have the second overall pick, and there's speculation as to whether or not they will trade down. Ron Rivera, coach of the team, said on Tuesday, if you're going to make a trade and you're going to go back, that guy you're going to take at that spot has to be able to make the kind of impact you'd need to validate missing an opportunity to take a player that's a high-impact guy. That's what I believe we need, is we need a guy that's going to come in and really change our football team. To me, there's a few guys on the board that are those kinds of players. To me, Chris, this may be all part of the effort to put the thumb on the scale to get the most possible return they can, because if they move down from number 2, I assume Daniel Snyder is going to want to have the mirror image of the package he gave up once upon a time to go from number 6 to number 2 to get RG3. But Chase Young is the impact player in this draft. He is the guy you plug in right away and you feel confident is going to make a difference for your team. If you trade down, you're not getting a Chase Young. Now, look, there may be other guys they love. There may be other guys they think that can be almost as good. But, man, I read that as Ron Rivera believing that it's going to take a lot for him to give up on that opportunity to pluck a Chase Young off the board, especially when we look at what happened last year when the 49ers didn't hesitate to take Nick Bosa at number 2.
Well, and to that, Mike, what we're saying, I mean, Nick Bosa, as we heard from a lot of people we talked to at the Super Bowl or anything like that, when they talked about, the first thing you got to do to stop the 49ers was number 97. Yeah, I mean, Nick Bosa, he's going into year 2 of his career, and we're gonna talk about, is he one of the best or the best defensive player in football? That's how special he is. Chase Young could be that guy too. He is. He's a game changer. Again, guys like Chase Young, they don't come around often. This is a specimen like a Jadeveon Clowney, a Myles Garrett, a Julius Peppers. It's that type of special, athlete. He's got a lot of elite traits, whether it's the strength, the size, the quickness, the straight ahead explosion. I mean, all of that stuff is off the charts. So, yes, I would have a hard time passing this off as the Redskins. Now, listen, if they still wanted to do the pass rusher thing and they felt like, that K'Lavon Chaisson, we really like him, and maybe we can trade down to pick number 9 or 10, somewhere there, and still get that guy where you feel like, hey, we have Chase Young with a higher grade, but K'Lavon Chaisson's grade's not too much lower, then maybe you do make that if you get some trade that blows you out of the park. But, as it sits right now, you go Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. That can be a game-changing defensive line that can dominate football games. And I think that's got to excite Ron Rivera, a defensive coach, and any Redskins fan.
When you are a team that is not good, and the Washington franchise hasn't been good for a while, I'm a firm believer that if you have that high pick and you can flip it into more lottery tickets, more opportunities to get players who can come in and help your team, you do it. But in a year like this one, where the ability to gather the evidence that you ordinarily would gather on players isn't what it otherwise would be, it's going to take a lot for me to trade that second overall pick and that opportunity to get Chase Young for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other picks, especially in this year's draft, because I'm not going to have the same confidence as we get farther down the board as I'm going to have at the very top. It's going to take a lot for me to give up the opportunity to bring in a Chase Young. And again, when you consider, now, there were other reasons why the 49ers were as bad as they were in 2018, but they were bad. They were 4-12. They earned the second overall pick in the draft. What a difference one guy made. And that's the key. Yes. When you have that one guy who can blow up the edge of an offensive line and open up the rest of the opportunity to pursue quarterback, because you're going to get the guy doubled and tripled and extra attention going his way. It's too much to pass on. And Ron Rivera, a defensive guy, he understands what it means to have an overwhelming defense. And you rattle off those names, they could have the kind of overwhelming defense that Ron Rivera was once a member of in Chicago. Now, they got a long way to go to get there, but that's how you lay the foundation for it with difference makers like Chase Young.
Yeah, well, we talk about this a lot during the season, right? Where we go, really good teams have something they're great at or a great position, which gives them the advantage of teams got to scheme and change their scheme and adjust beating that great scheme or great area of your football team. And I think when you add 4 names like we just talked about and add Chase Young to it, and hey, Ryan Kerrigan's a part of this mix too. getting up there in age and didn't have the greatest year last year. To me, it makes too much sense. And yes, that would be a game-changing defensive line, Mike. I mean, you're going to have to change your approach on what you do offensively if you play the Washington Redskins and they have those four studs up front, to where it's going to be a protection game changer. It's going to be, when we do drop back pass and we don't have max protection there, we're going to have to get to more of a quick passing game because we can't hold the ball all day with this group. So I look at it, if I'm the Washington Redskins, it's very dicey to trade and pass up on a guy like Chase Young. It's one of those things like we talked about last year, Mike, with the draft with Kyler Murray. It's like if the Cardinals let him go and see him being a superstar, for the next 10 years, you're going to kick yourself. And Chase Young is one of those guys where, we sit here, 5-6 years from now and go, damn, he's been one of the best defensive players in football for the last 4 years. And that'll drive them crazy at nights if they pass that up.
One mild concern I have about what Rivera said yesterday is that if they do trade down, and look, there's a lot of BS that goes into this entire process. I've been following it closely for 20 years. But if you trade down, the best thing that you could do is move down a few spots and then claim that you got the guy at the lower spot that you would have gotten if you had put in the card at number 2 anyway. So I'm a firm believer in keeping your cards pressed close to the vest and not talk about this guy or that guy or suggest that you're talking about Chase Young. Just, if you're going to trade down, trade down. And whoever you take with pick number 5, pick number 6, wherever, you start making the argument, hey, that's the guy we would have taken at number 2, and we got all this other stuff on top of it, and we got the guy in a lower slot, so we're going to pay him less money. That's the way to pull it off. That's the way to get your fans to think that a franchise that's been dysfunctional for decades is finally starting to figure it out, Chris.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think there is that aspect. Listen, they're a team that, again, hey, the argument is, okay, do we want to get this defensive line and have 4 first-rounders on there and put all those assets there and have the chance to have a dominant area of our football team? Or do we want to spread the wealth a little bit? Hey, we know they want another wide receiver opposite of Terry McLaurin. So, if they traded down to 12 or 13 or 10 or 9, and maybe the receiver they want's there, that might smooth over the fan base. I don't know, offensive tackle with the Trent Williams situation. That's certainly, there's a lot of tackles here in play at the top 15 of the draft from what I've seen so far. So that's a possibility as well, and if you get some trade where you feel like, okay, we're blown out of the water. I mean, it's 2 first-round picks and some change in there thrown on top of it, and you can still address a vital need for your football team, a little later in the first round. Man, that'll be a tough decision. But I think ultimately still, I think it would be too hard for me to pass up on Chase Young.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.